Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. We're going to spend some time today in this first hour talking about what you can do in your church to really mobilize individuals to, first of all, understand the importance of their civic duty to vote and to pray for those in authority. Number two, to really educate yourself and your congregation about these issues. And it's all about a cultural impact team. And for those of you that have been following some of the work of the Family Research Council, you may be familiar with that. They have really encouraged churches to put together a cultural impact team, and I have in studio with me today individual that developed this for Prestonwood Baptist Church, and we have quite a bit of information, including a link to the Cultural Impact Team website as well as the manual, so that we're going to give you a lot of practical help to understand what you can do in your own church and your own congregation to really begin to educate people and understand their civic duty. Ron Kelley is with us, and he is a resident of Plano, individual that actually was in the business community for so many years, many of those years with Fujitsu as a vice president, then came to work as the executive director of the Prestonwood Foundation, and more recently, you might remember his name, we mentioned last week, Kelley Shackelford, talking about the fact that he ran for the Plano City Council and now serves on the Plano City Council. So he's been on both sides of this, running a campaign, mobilizing individuals. Is a graduate from Appalachia State University, as well as has a Master's of Art in Theological Studies from Liberty University. And he and his wife, Gwen, have been married for, a quarter of a century. So done very well. So, Ron, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Kerby, I'm so blessed to be here today, so thank you so much.
We worked on a number of issues together, but I wanted to really educate our listeners across the country, and maybe even we might rebroadcast this later on. So again, as people get into the campaign season, they realize there's some things that we can do. And you have certainly been in church for a long time, and yet you recognize that even individuals that you sit in with a Sunday school class or in a worship service, a lot of Christians are not registered to vote. And even those that are registered to vote don't go out and vote in these very important elections.
Exactly. And, we certainly have a responsibility. We are citizens of the United States, which I feel that's an incredible blessing to be able to live here in this great country, the opportunities we have. So we have a responsibility to vote, to be good citizens of this land, and give the Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yes.
And certainly voting is a big part of that.
Citizens of heaven, but also citizens on earth. And we are to be in the world, but not of the world. And certainly that's important. But you know as well as I do, when you ran for office, that you said, well, I'm at a church, if just the people of my church vote for me, that's a done deal. And you came to a very stark realization that even in churches where the pastor, and we might mention your pastor is Jack Graham, he's been on this program before, and recently even had a candidate forum. So this is one that may be a little more politically attuned than others. Still, in a typical church, most Christians simply do not vote in a lot of these very important elections.
Yeah, well, first of all, I love my church and I love my pastor, so I feel very blessed where I'm able to serve. But I was very, quite frankly, naive. And when I decided, or I felt led to run for Plano City Council, I thought all I had to do was get my friends from Prestonwood who live in Plano to vote for me. The reality of the situation, first of all, you have to go out and collect signatures to have your name placed on the ballot. So I decided I was going to go get double the number number of signatures just to prove a point. I had people behind me, and I was really devastated as I was going through and checking to see if they actually were registered. There's a website you can go to,
Yes.
and I'm here to tell you a large percentage of those people, they were kicked out of the system because they're not even registered to vote.
Yes. And you and I have heard this statistic, but let me give it again for the listeners that maybe are hearing it for the first time. When we had George Barna on the program, and then Gary Frazier was in studio, so we talked with those two individuals. George Barna has done a pretty good job of evaluating this and looking at individuals who claim to have a born-again experience that is still meaningful in their life. And so he asked enough questions where I think he's got a pretty good handle on who is a born-again Christian. And after that, concluded that there were 39 million born-again Christians who did not vote in the last presidential election. That breaks down to 1/3, 2/3. 1/3, that is 13 million born-again Christians that were not even registered to vote, and then 26 million that were registered to vote but did not vote. You know as well as I do, if even a fraction of those individuals were registered to vote and voted intelligently, this would change the nature of elections in America, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I mentioned we're citizens of the United States, but most importantly, we are citizens of God's kingdom here on earth. And we have, I believe, my personal opinion is we have a biblical obligation to be engaged, and it all starts with voting.
Hey, we're going to open up the phones a little bit later and give you a chance to join our conversation. But let me, for just a minute, talk about the fact that you ran for city council. And many of our listeners, even if they live outside of the state of Texas, have heard about what happened first in Houston on the sexual orientation issue, and then subpoenaed the pastor's sermons. And then Plano had something very similar. And that was one of many reasons why you decided to run. And again, if we had Christians in office, some of these issues that Kelley Shackelford talks about every Friday with us on religious liberty issues, some of those simply would not exist because you'd be standing up for some of those principles, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Plano, it is a city of excellence, but I think in this instance, they got it wrong. And, I was, as I was sharing earlier, I was always engaged in national elections, even statewide elections, but I ignored what was going on in my own great city. And I've had a great experience raising my family in Plano. And, what I have learned though is that decisions made by a city council can affect our life overnight, literally. Where decisions made in Washington, D.C., it may take years before it filters down to a city like Plano. And that really got me thinking about, okay, if I'm going to complain about, a certain situation or what's going on, why in the world would I not want to do something about it? So for me, I felt led to actually run for the council. And I feel really blessed that I was able to win.
I've had a lot of people say, wow, how does a Christian view affect local politics? And I said, well, let's just take something as simple as zoning. Well, okay, what about zoning? Well, would you zone it to allow pornographic material to be distributed there? What about alcohol? What about gambling? What about zoning that says, well, we're going to require a church to have a special use permit if indeed they want to have a Christian school or if they want to have a parking lot? Yeah. All of a sudden you begin to realize even these, what seem to be such mundane issues that Christian values would never touch, become real important at the local level, don't they?
Absolutely. And if, someone's attitude is, well, that will never happen in my city, I would just warn you, just beware. It's coming. It's coming to your city. And even though, certain ordinances or laws are passed and someone will make an argument, well, it really won't hurt us today, but it gives a foothold in a community and what can be built off of that. So I just would warn everyone, it can happen in your city also. So the people and the people of God, those of faith need to be engaged. We have every right to have an effect on the culture that we're living in.
Going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get real practical, and that is, how could you in your own church have a cultural impact team? What could they do? And we actually have on the website, pointofview.net, a link to the cultural impact resources that are available. The first one that you might click on there actually will take you to culturalimpact.org, and then we'll also have a manual there so you can figure out how to do that. We'll talk with Ron Kelley about that and then open up the phones. That coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, during this Christmas week, I've taken the time to discuss the theology of some of the Christmas hymns and carols that we sing. Today, I'd like to talk about the First Noel. It is an English song dating back to the 16th century. Some people believe that the First Noel was French because of the French spelling of Noel, but it is actually an English song. The French word Noel does mean Christmas and is relevant to the lyrics of the song. The First Noel was published in 1833 when it appeared in the work Christmas Carols Ancient and Modern. The first line of the song suggests a December date for the birth of Christ. The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in the fields as they lay, in the fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Although many doubt that Jesus was born in December, there are some theologians, such as the author of the chronological aspects of the life of Christ, who believe that a December date is possible. Whatever the case about the date of the birth of Jesus, the song continues, "Born is the King of Israel." It reminds us that a king was born that night, yet few understood the significance of a birth in Bethlehem. Even the wise men from the east did not completely understand the significance of his birth, but they were guided to him by a star. For all to see there was a star shining in the east beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light, and so it continued both day and night. The song continues on to say that 3 wise men came from a country far. The Bible does not tell us how many wise men there were. What we do know, there were 3 kinds of gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What the Bible clearly teaches, however, is that Jesus was born and that he is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
This Christmas, bring home and share the gift of War Room on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital HD, available in stores now.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Let's get real practical now. We're going to talk about a cultural impact team. We have in studio with us today Ron Kelley. Again, serves as the executive director of the Prestonwood Foundation, also serves on the Plano City Council. But I want you to put on a different hat right now because, as if you don't have enough to do, and you're as busy as I am, you also decided to establish a cultural impact team. And for people that want to understand what it is, this is a website that we have linked. It's cultureimpact.org, and you have a take action section, voter tools, issues, resources, events. It's put together by the Family Research Council. And I know Tony Perkins' vision, Ron, is to really have a lot of churches recognize that within their congregation they can do a great deal to register people to vote, educate them about the issues, and then even after the elections, encourage them to continue holding their elected representatives accountable. And that's really what the Culture Impact Team is all about, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, how it came about at Prestonwood was Tony Perkins had a 3-day conference. Prestonwood held it at our church. And we were really challenged to go do this. And because of the great leadership of our pastor and also our executive pastor, Mike Buster, really wanted to go forward in making this happen. I was blessed that they let me run with this and be in charge of it. And so what we're trying to do is engage our membership. And we've already talked about voting, and we're going to start with the practical, get people registered to vote, make sure they do vote. We want to educate them on the issues and again, the principles that we adhere to, the biblical principles. We have every right. We have every right to want that to be engaged in our culture today.
Well, again, what I think a lot of churches find is they have a few activists. There are always churches that have activists. And if they don't have a way to kind of channel their enthusiasm, after a while you talk to the pastor or the elders and they kind of roll their eyes. Yeah, we got Bob over here and he's just, talking about these issues. This is a way to challenge and to maybe channel some of that activism in a positive way. So first, let's take voting. It seems to me that a lot of churches wonder whether or not they could even register a person to vote within the walls of the church. But there's no problem with that, is there?
None whatsoever. I mean, as you well know, a church cannot endorse candidates. But that doesn't mean that we have to remain on the sideline. And so we're going to be very aggressive in encouraging our members to register to vote and actually to vote. We should always vote candidates that support our morals and our values. Look, the principles that made this nation great, we're seeing a deterioration right in front of our own eyes here. And it's time to go back to these principles.
I would think so. With this idea of a cultural impact team, it would seem to me that you might want to have somebody on the team that could actually be a registrar. It's possible for an individual. You don't have to be working for the government. You can be a private citizen, and then you could actually help register people to vote in your own church, right?
Yeah, we're going to do something a little bit different this go around. Usually we would be there just to hand out information. And, people have good intentions, but everyone's busy today. So that card to go to fill out and to mail, it's put in your stack of to-do list. And then lo and behold, the date to register by, that goes by and you're not registered to vote. I mean, quite frankly, that happens. So what we're going to do is have deputy registrants right there. You have to go through a formal process,
right,
with the state of Texas. And matter of fact, we're sharing that information now with people.
That's good.
Where they can receive the actual cards right there at the booths that we're going to have set up, not only in our Plano campus, but at our North campus in Prosper. And we're going to receive those cards and we'll mail them in for them. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for very busy people today.
One of the other issues that you just alluded to a minute ago, and I want to come back to, and we have on our website, we're going to put this on, we've done it in the past, is where you can go on and make sure that you are registered to vote.
Right.
Because if you've moved, and I'll tell the story of my wife, we just moved from Plano to Allen, and when I just voted the other day, she said, well, I can't vote. I go, what do you mean? Well, I didn't change my voter registration. So even in my own family, I have some people that hadn't done that yet. Of course, we took care of those things. Yeah. But and there are other people that wonder if they're registered to vote, or maybe you know somebody and you wonder, I wonder if they're registered to vote. You can actually go online. So you can have that at your laptop computer in your own church, but we also will have this on the Point of View website. And you heard me say that there were 13 million born-again Christians in this country that were not registered to vote. You can see how that dramatically could change all overnight just in terms of that. So the first issue obviously is voter registration. What about candidates? It seems to me that you want to educate people about candidates. Is it possible that a church could have like a candidate forum or something like that?
Yeah, as you well know, our church, we had a presidential forum. Our pastor hosted that. It was a tremendous success. We want to bring that same format to local elections and statewide elections. So as a matter of fact, we sent out, now that we know who is running for each office, we're going to be entering the primary season here now in Texas. And we've sent an invitation to all of these candidates, and we're going to have a candidate forum for local and statewide elections at Prestonwood. It's going to be Monday, February 1st, and we're really excited that we're going to be doing this.
Well, again, I would say for our listeners that are in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina, Nevada, I mean, you got to work real fast, because if you want to do something before the primaries, but then, of course, March 1st, you have 12 different ones, Texas being one, but all sorts of other states as well. So now is the time to really, right after Christmas, focus on what you're going to do in your own church to maybe educate individuals. And even after the primary, it's still talk about local races. Maybe there isn't a primary challenge to a judicial race, but I've found over the years when I used to do Action Lunch, if you invite in judges and school board members and city council members, they are thrilled because they are looking for an opportunity to actually express their viewpoint in front of a number of citizens. And if a church says, or maybe a group of churches get together and say, we'll have this candidate forum, and you invite local officials, a lot of them will show up, won't they?
Absolutely. And, as you well know, again, we can't tell people who to vote for. We wouldn't do that. But we want our members and the community to be educated on who is running for office. What do they stand for? I mean, what are their principles? And that's what we're going to try to draw out in this candidate forum that we're going to host on February 1st.
By the way, as you go to the cultureimpact.org website for you in any one of the states, it has a place where you can register to vote. It also has the state voter guides. And, of course, I'll use Texas since we're talking about that at the moment. You have your own family policy group out of Austin. But I've identified, and we will again have this on our website, the various family policy groups all over the country, as well as then the various organizations like American Family Association, Concerned Women for America, Eagle Forum, all the way down that list. And so as you go to our website, you can click on your state, and it will be a list of all those voter guides. And that's another thing that maybe we should talk about after the break. But when we come back from the break, I want to talk about, how do we educate people? Again, voter guides, nonpartisan voter guides, what we can do. Can we pass those out? And a lot of people wonder about the legal issues, but that's not an issue. Kelley Shackelford's been on here before and has this particular piece of paper that we make available all the time. It's called Churches and Elections. And the only two things really churches cannot do that are 501c3 organizations is they cannot actually raise money for a candidate. Now, find me a pastor that's ever, passed the offering plate and then put that money in a candidate's hand, okay? And number two, the church as an entity cannot endorse a candidate. Even individuals can. So the bottom line is churches have a lot of freedom. So when we take a break, we'll come back, and let me also open up the phones, give you a chance to join the conversation today. Perhaps you have some thoughts about what you are doing or could be doing in your own church. And we are privileged to have with us today Ron Kelley talking about the cultural impact teams that Family Research Council wants to develop in various churches. We want to have it in your church as well. So that's why we have a link to cultureimpact.org, as well as a download of the manual that you've been using for you as well. It's all at the website pointofview.net. And as we are talking about these issues, don't forget that as we come to year end, we're really encouraging you to consider what you might do to support this ministry. And I mentioned Kelley Shackelford just a minute ago. Here's an individual that started listening to Point of View when he was a law student at Baehr. And as he was in law school, he began to think, I might be able to defend religious liberty. This could be a full-time career. And of course, that led to the establishment today of Liberty Institute. And he certainly has the vision and had the vision to do what he's doing today because people in the past supported Point of View and really gave him a vision of what he could do. We really encourage you now to support Point of View so we can impact others. You might be able to change a life today with your gift to Point of View. So let me encourage you to visit our website, pointofview.net. We have a section there called Changing Lives, Changing the Nation. And anything we can do to encourage you to help us would be greatly appreciated because we certainly want to do what we can to help develop these cultural impact teams and certainly change lives and change the direction of the nation. As we go to a break, there'd be a good time to go to the website, pointofview.net, and we'll continue our conversation with Ron Kelley right after this.
Vicki Garza started a college ministry, providing biblical care and counsel to students in crisis. She did that because of what she learned on Point of View. She heard Point of View because you, or someone like you, made a donation. It all began with a gift.
You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. It could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people because you were willing to invest in this ministry. I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
Virtually everything God does in a human life involves many people and many simple acts. Vicki got involved, and I'm asking you to do the same. If you're concerned about America, invest in Point of View, and please do it right now before 2015 ends. Look for the Changing Lives, Changing the Nation banner at pointofview.net or give using the Point of View radio app, pointofview.net. or call 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
All my life, I always looked for ways to help people, but I would be frustrated because I didn't know how to help. And that's what I learned when I dialed in that day to Point of View. I learned how to help, not only myself and my family, but I also learned how to help others. And it's actually totally changed my life. We have this You Arise ministry now. It was started in January of 2012, and we are refining the model over here at SMU, but the idea is to bring health and wellness resources that are biblically based onto the campus through the RAs, so that when they're approached by students in need and who have some sort of crisis happening in their lives, they will be trained and able. You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. And ultimately, it could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people, because you were willing to be a part of this ministry, to invest in this ministry. And I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Ron Kelley with us, and again, an individual that serves not only as the executive director of the Prestonwood Foundation, but also an individual that has actually started a cultural impact team at Prestonwood Baptist Church, and we're talking about this in terms of what you can do as well. And go to our website, pointofview.net. You'll see cultureimpact.org. We have a take action section, voter tools, issues, resources, events. And Ron, just a minute ago, we were talking about these voter guides, and you have various family policy groups around the country. I think there's, not every state has them, but almost every state does. I think there's like 40 out of the 50 states have a policy group that's associated with focus on the family. Texas Values is the one here in Texas, and they produce a voter guide. And this gives you an opportunity to see how individuals who are incumbents, how they voted on an issue, or sometimes they'll ask them a key set of questions, and sometimes you can then do some comparisons. I recognize that some candidates don't fill those out, so then what they do, and I think this is really good, they will then say, well, candidate did not fill out this, but this candidate is supported by. Then you can tell a lot by, this candidate is supported by National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood. Okay, I have a pretty good idea where they stand on this issue. Or this candidate supported by, say, the Conservative Action Fund or Family Research Council, something like that. So these guides are really important, and I know at your particular candidate forum, Texas Values, I believe, is actually one of the sponsors, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to be a sponsor, and as you mentioned, they offer a great resource to citizens to learn about candidates. So we'll have those guides available when we're asking people to register to vote. We'll have them there that evening, and they'll be a part of that voter forum on February 1st.
Let me just mention too that whether you're in California or Georgia or North Carolina, Alaska, wherever Illinois, you might be listening to this program, take those ideas and apply them to your particular state. And in all those states I mentioned, and many, many more that I can mention, there already is a family policy group. You already have the information from cultureimpact.org and even a manual, which you've used to establish this. So I really am hoping that this will generate enthusiasm on the part of a number of our listeners to actually just take a little bit of time to establish one of these teams so that, number one, you can educate people about the importance of voting. You can give them a chance to register to vote. And then you can give them information about how the candidates stand on those issues. And an intelligent group of voters could really change this next election, couldn't they?
Absolutely. And, one of the things we want to do, once we get this up and running and we get past our forum, we want to go visit other local churches, and we want to share with the pastor the success and what we're seeing, and we want to get them engaged in doing the same thing in their church.
Well, and we wanted to share this with the nation right now as we know that this has been successful for you, and certainly a number of other people want to apply that. If you'd like to join our conversation, I'll get to some phone calls in just a minute, 1-800-351-1212, but we've talked about registering people to vote, educating them about voting in the primaries. But I thought I'd mention one other issue, and that is these precinct meetings. Most of you are actually living in a state where after you vote on the primary, you can come back at night to be involved in a precinct meeting. Now, as a candidate, you recognize how important it was to have precinct chair people actually endorse your candidate, and how these individuals really can motivate people in their own precinct to know more about the issues and to really get out the vote.
Yeah, you should know who your precinct chairs are in the area that you live in. If you're running for office, what I found out, those precinct chairs they can be your best friend.
Yes.
And one of the sad things that we can report on, though, there are many areas that do not have precinct chairs because people are unwilling to step up and lead. And with cultural impact, that's another thing we want to do, that get people engaged and to serve their community in this area.
So again, let me encourage some of you to think about maybe becoming a precinct chairperson, because a chairman or a chairwoman can really make a difference. And of course, we have had individuals here that have actually gone from just the precinct to the senatorial. Candy Noble, Penna Dexter, Kathy Adams, and Kelley Shackelford, both national committeemen and committeewomen, all the way to the national level. So these are opportunities. And in some respects, if I can use a baseball analogy, we all love baseball around here. This becomes your farm team. This becomes your bench strength, right? And so if you say, well, I'd like to get involved, where do I get involved? Go to that precinct meeting on the day of your primary, because that's where you'll meet some other like-minded individuals, and that's where you can even put out a resolution that might then be used even at the national level. So these are some great ways to get involved.
Yeah, this is a way where you can make a difference. And so I would really encourage people to get involved in their local precincts.
Yeah, and I'd also encourage you to maybe find a candidate that you like and walk the precincts. You know, when I was all of the age of 12, I was walking precincts for my father. You got your kids walking for your precincts, right, and everything else. You know how important that was as well, to go out there and shake hands and everything.
Absolutely. You know, I had a political advisor tell me that was the old school, that everything is social media. Yeah. I couldn't disagree with that more.
Yes.
And getting out there, knocking on doors, meeting the people, and walking the neighborhoods, that is the greatest thing. Someone asked me what was the key to the win of my election, and I told them I was in a Plano living room every evening.
Yes.
Now, some nights I had 2 people, other nights we had 40 people, but I was there meeting the people, and the greatest thing from my election that I found is the greatness of Plano are our people, and the same thing goes with the rest of our nation.
Yeah, I remember years ago in 1980, somebody said, I want you to meet this individual. He's running for Congress in Vandergrift's district, and his name was Dick Armey, and he had worn out a couple of pairs of shoes walking those precincts and walking and meeting people and shaking hands. And we certainly want to give you that opportunity. So again, what's happening in your church? How are you educating individuals about these issues? Take the time to give us a call, 1-800-351-1212. Let's head out to Texas. First of all, Jeffrey, what would you like to share with our listeners today?
Hey, good afternoon. And I want to say thank you for what you're talking about is so important around the nation, but also, specifically in Texas, because I'll just let you know, I'm running for railroad commissioner. What I want y'all to know is I appreciate that you're getting people out to vote, and not, more importantly, Christians who haven't in the past. They say, "Hey, yeah, we'll vote for them." A lot of times in the church, we complain about things, and we say, what can I do? I'm just one person, but that one person, just like you said, they can either run for office, they can be a precinct chair, they can do things like that are so important to our nation, because whenever we look at it, we need to build that farm team. So if it's a dog catcher, we want to make sure that person holds the values that we hold so true in the church. So we want the dog catchers, because the dog catchers become the city council. The city council becomes the mayor. The mayor becomes, and it just goes on and on down the road. So I'm excited about what y'all are doing, and I encourage all the listeners out there to click on the website and look and see exactly how they can get involved.
Well, again, another candidate knowing how important all of this is. Ron, you've been on both sides of this, working for candidates and then being a candidate, and so you can appreciate this as well, can't you?
Absolutely. I will tell you, running for office, it is mentally and physically exhausting.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, those people who share your values, for them to go vote for you, that is a great thing. So, Jeffrey, thank you for running for office. And I would just echo everything that you said in regards to people voting their values.
Absolutely. And it's something that a lot of people don't realize how important each and every election is. Whenever we have turnouts that are so low, I was in the Air Force for 13 years, and I traveled around the world, and I saw what happens when people don't take care of business. And, America was founded on biblical principles, and I'm excited about the future of our nation and the future of our country, but we have to do what our responsibility is, and that's voting in the primaries. And March 1st is a primary, and I'd love to have your vote for Doug Jeffrey. That's me, but more importantly, get out there and research the candidates, because there's a lot of great people running across the state, and this is specifically for Texas, and I know across the nation. But there are people out there that you need to research, and you need to look at them. And there's going to be primaries, and there's probably going to be runoffs with as many people in the different races. In my race alone, there's 7 people.
Wow.
There's some good people running, but I want you to make sure that you get out and research who you think is the most in line with the principles that your church holds dear. And so I'm speaking to all the pastors. pastors, get your congregations registered to vote. And what the guys are doing on Point of View, you're awesome. This is exactly the message that we need to hear for not only Texas, but for our nation.
Very good. I need to take a break, and we'll come back. We'll take some more phone calls. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. In studio with us today, Ron Kelley. A little bit longer, we'll take some more phone calls, and certainly want to emphasize the importance of being registered to vote and then voting effectively and intelligently. And as we pointed out, sometimes you complain about the candidates that you have to vote for in the general election. Well, that's why you need to take care of that in the primary. That's coming up right now. We're going to take a break. We'll take some more phone calls right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Ron Kelley in studio with us for just a few more minutes. And let me just mention that as we were talking a minute ago with Jeffrey about close elections, you maybe heard me mention this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Some of these elections are so close they've ended in a tie. One, Penny Pullen, an individual that I used to do broadcasting with in Moody Broadcasting, was actually running for state representative, and that particular election ended in a tie. They'd never had one of those before, so they just decided to flip a coin, and she lost. And then here's the rest of the story, Ron. She goes to church that Sunday, and almost 36 people came up and said, "Oh, Penny, if I known it was going to be that close, I would have voted. You know, I was on vacation and I didn't get an absentee ballot, or I was working late, I didn't come home. I didn't think it was important. And if just one of those members of her church had voted, she would still be serving in the legislature there in Springfield, Illinois."
Wow.
But my all-time other favorite is William Crawford. He lost an election in Ohio because it was actually a tie. And again, they flipped a coin. He lost. But this was even worse. He has 2 sons. One lives with him and one lives across the street. Neither of them voted.
Oh, mercy.
Can you imagine? I remember you actually asked your daughter before she went off to college that she needed to vote for you just because it might be that close, right?
Yeah, I encouraged her. I was in a race where there was 3 people running. I was facing, in all likelihood, a runoff, and you certainly want to avoid that. But before my daughter went back to school, I said, "Megan, you need to go vote for me. You need to vote for Dad, just right over here at the library." She goes, "Well, Dad, I need to know what you stand for." And so I took a step back, and you have to know my Megan. She's such a great young lady, but took a step back, and I said, "Well, Megan, let me share with you what I'm for. I'm for paying your tuition, sending you a check every month." She looked at me, she says, "That's good enough, Dad. I'm going to go vote for you."
Yeah, it's so fun. Of course, you won without a runoff, but
Yes,
when we're talking with Jeffrey, I think he will be in a runoff, or some will be. Let's take a few more phone calls real quickly. We'll head up to North Carolina on the Good News Network. Paul, you're on with Ron Kelley.
Thank you very much for taking my call. It's kind of difficult to talk to people about politics. Everybody's so sick of that, as well as politicians. People say they're like diapers; they need to be changed frequently and often for the same reason.
Yes.
But what I've found is effective is talking to people where they are, what's important to them, and find out their values. And most people do live very conservatively. Most people, though they may have some liberal social views, they have to live quite conservatively. And I think if you appeal to their values, especially as Christians, the people of faith, you can reach them there. And, just people get caught up in partisan politics and start just pulling for one party or the other instead of finding the real issues. Like you said, we've been sick of following elections, not having good candidates.
Yes.
So many good candidates fall victim to the incumbents who are career politicians. They want to go and serve and do those things that are good for their community. They're held back because of the career politicians and the establishment. And if we get that grassroots and really just talking to people, whether you're in your car service or at the grocery store, and just kind of engage them, don't be hardline political, but just appeal to their values. Talk to them about the importance it is to get involved,
Very good. I remember the individual that served for a while as the governor of New Mexico, and she had been in one particular party and sat down with people of the other party, and they began to talk about all the values and everything. And finally she said to her husband, "I didn't realize we're actually Republicans," because she had never really thought through the issues, even working in the party machinery, had never really thought about, well, what are my values and who holds my values. And certainly we need to pay a little bit of attention to the party label, but we need to really pay attention to the character of the individuals, where they stand on the issues, if they're going to be a governor or a president, who they're going to have around them, because personnel is policy, basically. So those are all really important questions to ask, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's so easy just to throw up your arms and be frustrated and say, I can't make a difference, but nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why, and the points raised by our caller and by you, Kerby, are spot on. We can all make a difference by supporting our values and what we believe in.
Let's see if we can at least get one more phone call in, and we'll probably have time for some calls in the second hour. Of course, we'll be changing topics. We'll be talking about movies and things, because we have Ted Baehr, who wasn't able to be with us yesterday, will be with us today. But we'll head out to California first. And Jeff, I think you wanted to talk about how important it is to evaluate candidates from biblical principles. So you have the floor. Tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to disagree with that. In fact, the country wasn't founded on biblical principles at all. It was founded on the ability of people to decide which religion, independent of Christianity, they wish to practice. So, yes, we need to correct that. The country should encourage all people to practice any religion. The Bible has nothing to do with it, and Christianity has nothing to do with it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And of course, you're completely wrong on that, but that's okay. You're welcome to your opinion, but opinions are not necessarily facts. And let me just encourage individuals that if they say, well, wait a minute, what is a good answer to that? One of the things we've done over the years on this program is really spend a fair amount of time looking at what were some of the founding principles, not only for this country, but of the framing of the Constitution. And so we've had a number of guests on to talk about that. But again, in a pluralistic society, everyone has a right to their own opinion, and everybody has a right to their own religious views. And one of the things I really want to do is encourage people as much as possible to make sure that they vote their values, because this is going to be an important election about the future of America. And I think, if nothing else, Ron, I've learned from you that while we're paying a fair amount of attention to the national elections, because this is a national program, there is a lot of importance that we need to take for, and in terms of our own churches, to what's happening locally as well. And this is why I think these cultural impact teams will help you get to know who is running for city council, who's running for district or county judge, who may even be running for the legislature. Those are individuals that are going to have a very profound impact, and you're probably only going to get to know where they stand on those issues by actually coming out to those particular events, a candidate forum, which your church can organize, and get to know those individuals and ask them some very important questions.
Yeah, I would really encourage people to visit those candidate forums. As someone who ran for office, I took part in about 14, 15 of them. At the end of them, it wears you out, but that's where you can get up close with the candidate. Listen, they usually ask very good questions, and but then you can talk to the candidate after the forum. And that's where you can really determine whether that candidate is someone you should get behind. You know, the caller we just had, that just shows the greatness of our country, that we have the freedom of speech and idea, but the fact of the matter is our country was founded on biblical principles, and I'll fight for that day and night.
Well, again, we certainly have a need to address some of those very important issues from a biblical point of view, and that's what Point of View is all about, to really help you develop a Christian world and life view. And we want to, one more time, encourage you to visit the website, pointofview.net. You can go to that website. You'll find a link to cultureimpact.org. Lots of take action material, voter tools, issues, resources, and then there's even a manual, the one that you actually use to actually establish your cultural impact team there at Prestonwood. So I'm hoping that out of this broadcast, there'll be all sorts of other individuals that will, in their churches, consider what they might be able to do to organize like-minded individuals to, number one, encourage people to be registered to vote, number two, to really understand these issues and to vote intelligently both in the primary and the election. And if that's what takes place, then we've done our duty today here on Point of View.
Yeah. Kerby, thank you so much for letting me come and share here today. And we're so blessed to live in such a great country. And it's time for us to take back our country in so many aspects. So we've got to get engaged. It all starts with getting registered to vote, get behind the right candidate that you believe supports your values. And then there's more we can do from there. But that's a great start.
And you might even consider running for office, as Ron Kelley did, and serves in city council. So thank you for being here. We'll do it again. But let me mention as we go to a break that this is an opportunity for you also to support this ministry. We've been talking about the story of Vicky Garza, who started a campus ministry and had such an impact on the lives of students. People in the past supported us so that we could educate her. We want you to support us so we can educate others in the future. We'll take a break, come back with more right after this.
Vicky Garza started a college ministry providing biblical care and counsel to students in crisis. She did that because of what she learned on Point of View. She heard Point of View because you, or someone like you, made a donation. It all began with a gift.
You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. It could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people because you were willing to invest in this ministry. I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
Virtually everything God does in a human life involves many people and many simple acts. Vicky got involved, and I'm asking you to do the same. If you're concerned about America, invest in Point of View, and please do it right now before 2015 ends. Look for the Changing Lives, Changing the Nation banner at pointofview.net, or give using the Point of View radio app, pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
All my life, I always looked for ways to help people, but I would be frustrated because I didn't know how to help. And that's what I learned when I dialed in that day to Point of View. I learned how to help. Not only myself and my family, but I also learned how to help others. And it's actually totally changed my life. We have this You Arise ministry now. It was started in January of 2012, and we are refining the model over here at SMU, but the idea is to bring health and wellness resources that are biblically based onto the campus through the RAs, so that when they're approached by students in need and who have some sort of crisis happening in their lives, they will be trained and able. You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. And ultimately, it could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people, because you were willing to be a part of this ministry, to invest in this ministry. And I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, we have an opportunity to talk about movies. Yesterday, we talked about television, and during this time of year, really very important to talk about what is happening in the movie industry. And of course, as we have talked about, there are some great films to see, as well as maybe to talk about some of those that have had such a Christian theme this year, things like War Room and Woodlawn. And we couldn't think of a better person to bring to the microphone than Dr. Ted Baehr. He is the founder and chairman of the Christian Film and Television Commission. He's been on the program many times before, a good friend of this ministry, publisher of Movie Guide. We have a link to that as well, and author of all sorts of books. For example, How to Succeed in Hollywood, Media-Wise Family, The Culture-Wise Family, individual that is oftentimes consulted by major studios on various scripts, and also, of course, teaches at major universities on issues of film. So, Dr. Ted Baehr, first of all, Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining us today.
Merry Christmas, Kerby. And, you know, it's beautiful out here, but it's always fun to go and visit you in your studios and see you in person. So I'm going to have to just pray for you that you have a spectacular Christmas and that things go well. And you're always invited out here to the gala, so come and join us at the gala on February 5th. We'd love to have you.
We need to do that. I have been to your offices and just think of the world of what you do, and have such respect for all of that. But let's see if we can maybe talk about these films that have been out this year. When we were even talking about some of the movies yesterday, people were saying they were very pleased and even somewhat surprised that you had movies like War Room and Woodlawn, and even going back a little further, God's Not Dead. Is that going to continue? Because since you look at some of these scripts, I'd love to know your thoughts about what we've been through over the last year or so and what might be coming in the future.
Well, the first thing that we need to know is that when we started the whole ministry in 78, and then we started the Movie Guide in 85, there was only one movie with positive Christian content. There were only 6 family films of the year, and 4 of them were independent films that were just dreadful. So we've seen it now move up to 40% of the films, family films, and now we've seen just an incredible amount of faith-based films. And next year, you're going to get even more faith-based films, most of them that we've already screened here at Movie Guide. So first, in February, you're going to have Risen, which is absolutely terrific, and it's the first Christian film coming out from Sony Pictures that's really Columbia Pictures, not the Sony Affirm faith-based division of Sony. And then right after that, you've got The Young Messiah, which is coming out of Universal, which we helped with the script and took out the things that you know about, Kerby, the monophysite problem, the homoousian problem. Probably nobody else knows about it, but that's okay. And then the next one is God's Not Dead 2, which we've screened, and it's just spectacular. And then Miracles from Heaven, which I've screened, and at the gala they want to bring Jennifer Garner and all these people.
Yes.
So people are just so and the next one after that is they're just there's a flood of those after that. You've got Ben-Hur, you've got 10 Commandments. I was at Jim Giannopoulos, who is the head of Fox, his Christmas party with talking to the head of production. They're doing Paradise Lost. We worked on that script, so it's tremendous. There are going to be more stronger, better, bigger faith-based movies next year than you even had this year. This year you had a couple that were big and really wonderful, like The 33, which was absolutely terrific from Warner Brothers, and surprised me in that director, who's brilliant, a woman director, and this is a rare thing, is doing Miracles from Heaven with Devon Franklin. But you also had some other movies. You had, Fox brought out Brooklyn, which is just about an Irish girl coming to America. And you probably saw it. Most of your audience didn't see it. Captive was good. It did not do well at the box office. I was surprised about that. Paramount really didn't release it well. Do You Believe? The Letters about Mother Teresa. Manny, which is another one that should have been seen. War Room, Woodlawn, and then there's many, many more. And there's so many that in the past we would give out our $100,000 Epiphany Prize, and we'd only have one movie to choose from. And now I've got 40 movies to pick from. And if you consider we already reviewed them, so that's 3 hours to review, 3 hours to write, 3 hours to edit. So now we're in 9 hours, and then you're picking out scenes and deciding on winners and working with judges. You've got another 10 hours. So between now and December 30th, I've got 400 hours of work to do. So, if your assistant doesn't call me at the right number, they'll never get me, because I got to get somebody who's actually not glued to a screen watching these movies again and again. But this year for family films, Kerby, you noticed the family films this year were great. I mean, Home was absolutely terrific, and I had to watch it again and again, and I said, this is spectacular. And Inside Out, and Max, and Paddington, and Peanuts movie, and Shaun the Sheep, about the little sheep deciding they didn't want to have a shepherd. Sounds like reality. We don't want to have a shepherd, and then they find out they need a shepherd, and that's by our friends at Ardmore, who when we talked to them a while ago, and we talked to them with every movie that they come out, but they were talking about their Christian faith. And SpongeBob, the producer of SpongeBob, is going to be there at the Movie God Awards at War Room, and so we've got more family films than ever before. The Good Dinosaur, I should have mentioned that. And Cinderella. Sure. Yeah. Great film, Cinderella, which probably the best rendition of Cinderella. And let's see the box office. I've got these all up in my secret movie guide list. The box office of Inside Out was $350 million. Cinderella was $201 million. Home was $177 million. SpongeBob was $162 million. And then if we even go to mature audience movies, we had an incredible year of mature audience movies with pro-family, anti-abortion, pro-helping people. I mean, just an incredible number of statements that, there was an article, you probably don't know, but I'm going to tell you, in the New York Times, and actually you're one of the few people I know who read all these things. So, and the New York Times said Hollywood is not pro-choice. Well, that's because we've shown them that pro-choice movies bomb at the box office, and you make money with pro-life movies. And so the surprising thing is that the movies that they've got out there are pro-life movies. So there's just a whole slew. I count, and it's over $3 billion at the box office for those movies that had they're mature content. In other words, some of them have no sex but they have action violence, but they're very mature content, but they're also got a lot of good stuff in them. Like McFarlane was just a beautiful movie. And The 33, one of my favorite movies of all time.
33. We need to take a break. When we come back, though, I want to talk about what's available at Movie Guide, because, first of all, you have the reviews of those which are in the theaters, and then various videos, as well as you have all sorts of other features as well, some of the good and bad advertisers, as well as various athletes and celebrities encouraging young people to wait till marriage, and all sorts of other things that are there. And I also might encourage people to go and find some of your top 10 lists, because you have top 10, and there are a variety of different categories, which we'll get to. So let's take a break, and then we come back. We'll talk for a few more minutes with Dr. Ted Baehr. As you can tell, he's very busy because he's got to evaluate so many of these movies. And you do get in each one of these evaluations so much good material, because not only does it evaluate things like language and violence, sex and nudity, but then it gets into the content as well. What kind of worldview does it have, and what kind of redeeming value does it might have? What are some of the possible concerns or cautions? It gives you all sorts of ratings. And so if you have always wondered, before you go into a theater, what you're going to see, this is the great resource to have access to. Let's take a break. We'll continue our conversation for a few more minutes with Ted Baehr, and then we'll open it up for your phone calls. Coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, during this Christmas week, I've taken the time to discuss the theology of some of the Christmas hymns and carols that we sing. Today, I'd like to talk about the First Noel. It is an English song dating back to the 16th century. Some people believe that the First Noel was French because of the French spelling of Noel, but it is actually an English song. The French word Noel does mean Christmas and is relevant to the lyrics of the song. The First Noel was published in 1833 when it appeared in the work Christmas Carols Ancient and Modern. The first line of the song suggests a December date for the birth of Christ. The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in the fields as they lay, in the fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Although many doubt that Jesus was born in December, there are some theologians, such as the author of the chronological aspects of the life of Christ, who believe that a December date is possible. Whatever the case about the date of the birth of Jesus, the song continues, "Born is the King of Israel." It reminds us that a king was born that night, yet few understood the significance of a birth in Bethlehem. Even the wise men from the east did not completely understand the significance of his birth, but they were guided to him by a star. For all to see there was a star shining in the east beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light, and so it continued both day and night. The song continues on to say that 3 wise men came from a country far. The Bible does not tell us how many wise men there were. What we do know, there were 3 kinds of gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What the Bible clearly teaches, however, is that Jesus was born and that he is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
This Christmas, bring home and share the gift of War Room on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital HD, available in stores now.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're going to have with us for just a few more minutes Dr. Ted Baehr, again, founder and chairman of the Christian Film and Television Commission, publisher of Movie Guide, and we have a link to movieguide.org. And Ted, for just a minute, I thought we might also talk about your top 10 list. You have the top 10 Christmas movies, movies about selflessness for teenagers, selflessness for children, top 10 science fiction movies, and so much more. There are parents, I'm sure, that say, well, there's nothing good to watch on television, and that may be true, although there are oftentimes things that people can find as well. But then when they go to iTunes or Netflix, they wonder what to pick. And you've done a very good job over the years of reviewing not only the films that are in the theaters and other videos that are available, but even suggesting a top 10 list. And I think that's just a great thing to begin to consider during this Christmas season.
Well, the top 10 list makes it easier for everyone, and we do have a top 100 list of all the movies that we love dearly. And I've got to just take it aside here. It used to be that you'd go to Netflix and find first-run movies, really good movies, big movies. You'd find the 33 or Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, etc. You don't find that anymore, and the reason is there are about 2,000 outlets for movies. If they go to a theater, they get $10, $12 a ticket now if you're living in Dallas. But if they go to Netflix, they only get 16 cents per thousand. I've got to make sure these are accurate figures. So at 16 cents per thousand, all the major studios have decided to start avoiding Netflix. So what you find now on Netflix, and a friend of mine is one of the heads of Netflix, so I don't want to be negative about this,
Sure.
is you find a lot of the B movies. So people go on Netflix and the other ones, and they say, how come I can't find The Martian, or how come I can't find Mission Impossible? Well, you're not going to find it there because the studios have released their own streaming sites. The studios are working with the networks on streaming sites. So Netflix is something that's sort of passed by, but most people outside of the 25-mile barrier of Hollywood don't notice that. But I'm sure you've noticed it, because I hear people all the time coming to me and saying, I looked at Netflix, I can't find anything.
Can't find it.
If you can find, you may just want to go and Google online for, I'll give you some of the top 10 for Christmas. The Chronicles of Narnia, that's one of our top 10.
Yes.
Family Man, which is terrific. The Robe, with Richard Burton, one of the great movies of all time. Ben-Hur, who doesn't love Ben-Hur? Joyeux Noel, which is about the wonderful event during World War I where the French and the Scot and the German armies started playing Joyeux Noel, and you know what happened. They stopped, and they started to associate with one another and pray for one another. Muppet Christmas Carol, which is my son's favorite. Last Holiday, which is great. Black Nativity, if you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. It's a Wonderful Life, which is everybody's favorite, and the Nativity Story. And again, like you said, we have many of these online to help people with movies for families, movies for dates, movies for kids at different stages of development, and helpful hints that if you've got Netflix, what do you do when you're relegated to B zombie movies? Well, you got to move on beyond Netflix at that time.
For sure. Let's talk about the reviews for just a minute. I know most of our listeners are familiar with you, but again, we've picked up radio stations, and some people have maybe never been to Movie Guide. You have reviews for theaters, new on DVD, archive, TV, movies, and others. I tried to explain a little bit, but let's see if we can get into that a little bit more, because you do evaluate it at different levels: language, violence, sex, nudity, the content, a biblical worldview. You're giving them more than just whether or not they're going to have a couple of swear words in the movie, aren't you?
Right, and I was just watching the Steve Jobs movie, and everybody was saying, Steve, you can't do this. Actually, so, in that way we did it. What we've done, and it's become very popular, and it's used by a lot of people, so that it's up to 34 million, I think, now in terms of all the different usage, is that we provide people with a scale that includes dramatic value, because they're movies that are just great dramatically, but those movies, some of them may be a -2, a -3, a -4, depending upon how much bad content. And bad content for us doesn't just include bad language and or pornography or violence or whatever. It includes everything from Trumbo, the movie about the communists, who was just one of the lackeys for Stalin, which actually kept the movie fairly clean, except for the fact that the man was abhorrent and destroyed many people in Hollywood's life. My father was an actor at that time. Some of the major stars lost their jobs, like Adolphe Menjou, and that story has never been told, the true story of that period. So we look at things in terms of historical revisionism, in terms of philosophy, in terms of theology, and we put that all together in a content section, and then we have two scales. One, the dramatic scale, because if you tell a kid, and this is what other people used to do, well, this movie's no good, and they see it, and they say this is great, it doesn't work that way. Then you lose all credibility. So we say, yes, this is a 4-star movie, Revenant or whatever, but it's got extreme violence, ugly violence, intestines pouring out, and you may not want to watch it.
Yeah. And Star Wars is a good illustration where you give it 4 stars for quality and recognize that, again, even talking about wonderfully familiar and fresh, but with the same worldview. So then when you get into the content, a -2, extreme caution. So people can understand that there are production values, and then there's what's the content in the movie. And so it gives people a much better understanding about how to begin to evaluate a movie before you walk into a movie theater or before you rent a DVD. I don't know who does that anymore, but, those kinds of things. But talk about
DVDs and Netflix, right? We got both. Yeah.
How can people use that?
I'm never going to hear the last of it from Pablo at Netflix, so sorry about that. How can people use it? Well, one, you should know before your children go. I mean, quite clearly, there's a tremendous loss of the next generation in our society. Cornell University did a study that over 80% of the kids are leaving the values and the faith of their parents. So you have to be intentional about bringing them up. You have to be intentional about what they see. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to lock them in a room like the movie room and throw away a key. This means that you have to teach them discernment. And if they do go see Star Wars, what we said in the review is tell them the pantheism first place is silly. And since you brought up Star Wars, I'll point that out. In Star Wars, you want the good guys to win. The Republic, you want the Republic to win. I wanted the Republic to win, but if it's all the Force, which they say in the middle of it, and it doesn't make any difference because the Force is both good and bad, well, then really, Kerby, you're one of the few people that know that it doesn't make any difference who wins. If it's both good and bad, and the Force is in everything, and everything is in the Force, what difference does it make if one or the other wins? So actually what happens is that people get swept by the emotion, and then they start to encode behavior, philosophies, theologies that are contrary to their own, and then they start slipping into the abyss. So we try to help people choose the good and understand the good and develop discernment and wisdom and knowledge and understanding.
Well, again, Dr. Ted Baehr has been with us, and again, he is the chairman of the Christian Film and Television Commission, but also the publisher of Movie Guide. We have a link to movieguide.org. I just really do recommend that you find those resources and use those effectively so that you'll be a parent or a grandparent that will have a positive impact on your children and grandchildren. So, Ted Baehr, thank you for joining us, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful New Year, too. God bless.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
We'll talk again. Ted Baehr, good friend, and he has certainly been an individual who's been on this program so many different times over the years, and weren't able to connect up with him yesterday, so I wanted to bring him in today so that you could hear a little bit about movies, and then leave this last half hour for some of your comments. We had some of you that talked yesterday about television. Some of you decided that maybe you don't want to have a television in your home, and I'd love to hear from some of you that didn't have a chance to get through. We also talked about how to really evaluate everything from television to those digital devices to these movies, and I really wanted to take some time to get into this because during the Christmas season and even during this kind of holiday period, this is a time when kids tend to be watching a little bit more television. It's when they're on the websites a little bit more and not doing homework, but maybe trying out video games. It's when they want to go to the movies, and I wanted to give you some tools so that you could make some wise decisions about that. So this last half hour, I'm going to open up the phones and get your comments. So what movies have you been to that you think are worth going to? What about television? Some of you gave some very good creative ideas about what we can do to maybe monitor things like our Facebook pages and computers in the home and cell phones and much more. So if you'd like to join the conversation today, let me open up the phones. 1-800-351-1212. Our last live broadcast before Christmas. We will be running a tape tomorrow and, of course, on Christmas Day. So if you would like to join us, we would certainly love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. And in the first hour, I spent a little bit of time talking about the impact that Point of View had on the lives of people like Kelley Shackelford, and one that we've been talking about, Vicky Garza, starting a campus ministry because of listening to Point of View. So let me encourage you to pay it forward and recognize that your support of this ministry will impact others who will be making a difference. And so if you would consider what you might do right even now as we go to a break, to visit our website, pointofview.net, and click on that button that says Changing Lives, Changing the Nation. We'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear from you on air. 1-800-351-1212. We'll come back with some of your phone calls right after this.
Vicky Garza started a college ministry to students in crisis. She did that because of what she learned on Point of View. She heard Point of View because you or someone like you made a donation. It all began with a gift.
You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
Change a life, change the nation. Please invest now at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
From Provident Films comes War Room. The movie that inspired audiences is coming to DVD and Blu-ray in time for Christmas.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
Prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room on DVD and Blu-ray. Available now at Christian retailers.
All my life, I always looked for ways to help people, but I would be frustrated because I didn't know how to help. And that's what I learned when I dialed in that day to Point of View. I learned how to help, not only myself and my family, but I also learned how to help others. And it's actually totally changed my life. We have this You Arise ministry now. It was started in January of 2012, and we are refining the model over here at SMU, but the idea is to bring health and wellness resources that are biblically based onto the campus through the RAs, so that when they're approached by students in need and who have some sort of crisis happening in their lives, they will be trained and able. You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. And ultimately, it could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people, because you were willing to be a part of this ministry, to invest in this ministry. And I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take as many phone calls as we can in this last half hour. It's an open line, 1-800-351-1212. We'll go to South Carolina. James, thank you for joining us today. What would you like to share with us?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to share with the concept of with computer and TV monitoring. We are both 60 years old. But we still got a 10, 11, and 12-year-old daughters, and we determined that we really didn't need TV nor internet in the house, and it has not been, well, there hasn't been no transition or anything, because the children just seem to, they go off and they're, create their own things. They're always involved in creating. So it can be kind of a radical way to do it, but we determined that one day we're going to be standing before the living God, giving account of did this, how are we going to honor Him and in our house, and with the influences that children can be influenced by. And we just determined it wasn't going to be that bad to be without it.
Well, I'm glad you shared that. Let me just share with you, James, and all of our listeners, what the world is like that your kids or grandkids will go into, because anybody listening yesterday might have noticed that I talked about the fact that in again, these numbers are pretty accurate, because AC Nielsen Company has spent millions and millions of dollars to find out which TVs are on, what channel they're tuned to, and who's watching them. And they concluded that even though a typical young person, by the time he or she graduates from high school, will spend about 11,000 hours in front of a television set, and that isn't even adding in all the computer stuff that you were just talking about, but she will have spent 22,000, what they see. That 22,000 hours, they will have seen 16,000 televised homicides, 200,000 acts of violence. And just one more, I won't overwhelm you with statistics. They will have seen 640,000 television commercials. So basically, your children have been spared some of that, but the average child in America will have seen that level of visual violence and that level of materialism and even sexuality. It's no wonder that kids that grow up in homes where there's no TV set or where television's viewing is limited are just remarkably different than the rest of
deficits in our children. So it's, like I said, it's radical, but there's the good is so limited.
Really sad about what it is doing to our society today.
Yes. Well, we have heard the potential for bad, so we just determined that this was the way we were going to go.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you calling in. You're not alone, as you could tell from even some of the calls we had yesterday, and even from the next caller we're going to have here. And so if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. During this time, it is really easy for young people to just plop in front of a television set or a computer screen or whatever. And I think you already heard me yesterday give you some of the facts and figures from that research that has come in from, interestingly enough, the Kaiser Family Foundation. About every 5 years, they evaluate how much media is used by young people, ages 8 to 18, television, music, computers, video games, reading, and movies. And as I said, all of them are on the increase. Only one's decreasing, the amount of time reading, and some remarkable increases in terms of music and computers and video games. And so those are some real concerns as well. And if you'd like to join the conversation, we'll take those phone calls. But let's head up next to New Hampshire, WSEW. Bob, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kerby, for taking my call. I just wanted to say I've been a Christian now for almost 20 years, and at the time I was running a business, and I was very profitable, but I was like clockwork. I'd come home after work, take my jacket off, and plunk myself in front of the TV, and I'd be there till about 11:30. And at one point, I started watching some of the sitcoms and some of the commercials, and I said, they must think that we're complete idiots. I just got so upset with it. And 14 years ago, I had the two televisions, which were very expensive, but I got rid of them. And prior to that, I had bought many books, the classics and, all the good-looking books to put on my shelf to impress people before I was born again, and, and it did impress people. Did you read all those? Well, not all of them. But anyways, 3 hours reading a classic versus watching 3 hours of TV, there is no comparison. And the only thing, from time to time, there'll be something like a news article, like the Paris event and the San Bernardino. And even the debates. Well, I can just turn on my smartphone and I can get that and watch those things, that I want to keep up to date on. It's a smaller screen, but I get the same information. And I'll tell you, it has been the greatest relief in my life. I have learned so much and feel so much better about myself. Not having a TV. A TV is really an addictive device. And like I say, I believe that people who run them think that they're playing to a bunch of idiots, I mean, anybody who sits in front of Judge Judy for an hour or whatever, it has got to be, give me a break. It's just... so I just wanted to tell you that I have not missed it one single bit. And whenever the slightest urge comes, I pick up a good Christian book, of which I have 6,000 now, 4,000 on my computer. So I'm not going to get rid of them. The computer. I also have the Logos software. That's important to me. But I don't need that for television entertainment. I'm perfectly happy with reading.
And you did point out something that has changed dramatically, and that is if I don't see something on television, and oftentimes I don't, because I don't have it on that often, or because doing a program or whatever, you can find it later on in terms of YouTube, or, of course, some of the movies on Netflix. We're going to have one of our callers wants to talk about that in just a minute. So there are ways that you can still recover that and not necessarily be tied to it. And again, as I've said before, one of the questions that I think all of us need to ask, especially if you got young children, is are you making it just a little too easy to just plop down in front of the TV set, turn on the remote, and sit there like a TV zombie for hours? There are certainly great programs, but again, there is, I think, when we start looking at some of those numbers on the average American television is on 7 hours a day, more than 7 hours a day, or basically more than 50 hours a week. Obviously, we need to rethink what we are doing with this particular technological device. And then, of course, when I add to that computers and smartphones and video games and all sorts of other things, some other very important questions to ask as well. Let's head out to Georgia. And Martin, I think you want to share a little bit about what you found on Netflix. So share with us what you've been finding and how we can use that in a positive way.
Hey, how's it going today? One of the things that really got me with a lot of people that have called prior to this, and I don't people that are calling in a little bit older and here that use
mom's house. Then
it's so easy for us to look at places on TV and Netflix and things like that. But what's important, in my opinion, is that almost a third of those shows are historical documentaries and informative educational shows that kids now have access to at the click of a mouse, which has never, been available before. And I think it's just a really positive thing to see. I believe that it's a good thing also maybe to limit the television and things, especially with corporate media and television and things that are their paid programming and whatnot. But also with that, you also lose exposure to the really great programs that are out there that are just really designed just to let's take 45 minutes and learn something. And that's a really positive impact, I think, that doesn't really go noticed as much.
Well, and I think you're right, because, again, every form of technology has both benefits and drawbacks. As I've said before, the tree of technology has sweet fruits and bitter fruits. And so, again, one of the questions I really want people to challenge them to do is to really evaluate what kind of discernment they have. When the average television in America is on 7 hours a day, obviously some people are abusing that use of technology. But on the other hand, as you point out, all sorts of documentaries. We had somebody yesterday talking about YouTube, and we can go on to all sorts of different websites that are beneficial. But at the same time, there are also those dark back alleys on the information superhighway. So this is why we are going to need, as Christians, more discernment in the 21st century than ever before. And that's one of the reasons why we've done these programs. I'll take a break. If you'd like to join the conversation, add your advice or opinion, we'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. Let me just mention real quickly before I take another phone call, and also want to talk a little bit about the statement made by Franklin Graham just before we end the program today. But let me, while we're talking about this idea of discernment, really important, and that is, I've oftentimes, when I've spoken to audiences, say that discernment requires at least 3 simple steps, maybe more, but here are 3 that maybe are helpful. The first step is stop. That is, stop what you're doing long enough to concentrate. The sad reality is that because we live in the midst of what I call a media storm, we have so many electronic messages vying for our attention, sometimes we really don't concentrate. The only way your brain can solve that problem is sometimes it sort of turns off a little bit. And so, you know, you've all walked into a room where your kids are watching television, your grandkids are watching TV, and they're like TV zombies, and they're not even paying attention. They're just sort of glued to that. Let's be honest. Sometimes in church, we're singing the great hymns of the faith, or we're singing contemporary Christian music, and we're not even thinking about the words. So the first key to discernment is to stop long enough to concentrate. So number 1, stop. Number 2, listen. That is, give attention to what is entering your mind. Over the years, I recognize that, again, we just allow so much of it to enter into our eye gate or our ear gate, whether it's music we're listening to, whether it's a movie we're watching without really evaluating its content, whether it's a television program, whether it's a website that we're just kind of gazing at. We need to, first of all, stop long enough to concentrate. Number 2, listen. That is, give attention to what is entering your mind. And then finally, look. That is, look at the consequences of entertainment in your life. And we've had a few share that, you know, all I did was come home, watch television, wasn't really positive. We've all, I think, seen situations, if we're parents, where kids, after they've watched a violent program, then are violent with their siblings. And, you know, just pay attention to what is actually doing to your Christian life. And those, I think, are some really important steps to discernment. So stop, listen, and look. Let's take some more phone calls real quickly before we run out of time. We'll go to Kansas this time. KNEO. Steve, you have the floor. What would you like to add?
Well, hi, Kerby. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say that a lot of the stuff on TV anymore seems so dark, and it's spiritually ungodly. Like the new shows they program as Lucifer and Angels from Hell, or that may not be the exact thing, but so much of it. And we got rid of our pay TV satellite stuff probably 13, 14 years ago, so we only watch whatever's free, and we don't watch that much, try to watch the news and sports. But even in sports, you know, the TV is so bad and the commercials are so bad.
I know. Yeah.
I've been teaching Awanas on Sundays, and it was 2 football seasons ago. I was at church teaching the Awanas class, and so I recorded the NFC Championship game so I could watch it later for football. And as I was watching it later, one of the commercials was a Chevy commercial, and it just had some funky music on there, and was showing people having a good time at a park, like a big picnic thing, and it said a man in his truck and his kale salad and his veggie burgers. And then it showed people like pigging food down real bad, and then it said, be damned. And then it said, Chevy 2014, blah, blah, blah. And, I couldn't believe it that they actually had the nerve to tell people to go to hell right on TV. And then Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council got after them, and like the next week they had the same commercial on it, but they took the be damned out.
Yeah, they took it out. Yeah, and again, This is why I think it's really important to let advertisers know where you stand on those issues. And of course, yesterday we had Tim Winter on. You can go to his website, Parents Television Council, and they have some lists. And also, interesting enough, I just noticed this today on Ted Baehr's website, some of the advertisers that deserve a pat on the back for endorsing and sponsoring good television programs, and those that don't. So we can let our opinions be known, but more importantly, I just again think we need to spend some time guarding our heart, what we put in our eye gate and ear gate. And there are some really great programs out there, great things to see. But again, as you have pointed out, we're sort of losing the culture. And sadly, although there are Christians in Hollywood and Beverly Hills, Burbank, all that area, the reality is there are probably now more Christians working in the film industries and the studios because there's some faith-friendly ones. And the few Christians tend to that are in television, they tend to be in one or two studios, which means almost all of the other studios are really, really dark. As a matter of fact, the most secular institution in America is not the university. It's Hollywood. It's actually the television studios today. So that should tell you a little bit about the kinds of things that come into your TV set and why we need to be really exercising discernment.
Yeah, and Kerby, I'd like to say, too, I just really appreciate your program, and I tell people about it all the time. But because of your program and hearing Dr. Geisler and stuff on there, I've been thinking about attending seminary for some years. And anyway, I started attending BES, Veritas, with Norm Geisler and those guys, and about a third of the way done with a Master of Arts in Theology. And it's I owe you great credit for that.
Well, thank you so very much. Great seminary. Of course, Dr. Geisler and I have co-authored books. We've had him on before, and wish you well, because I know God will use you with that kind of education. So thanks for sharing that today here on Point of View.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
Let me say Merry Christmas, but just before we run out of time, I did want to mention that you may have seen that Franklin Graham, of course, one of our great leaders here, has said that he just finally has decided that he's had enough with the Republican Party. He said, shame on Congress for passing such a wasteful spending bill last week, and to top it off, funding Planned Parenthood. He said a Huffington Post article called it a big win for Planned Parenthood. I call it a big loss for America. After all the appalling facts revealed this year about Planned Parenthood, our representatives in Washington had a chance to put a stop to this, but they didn't. Franklin Graham goes on to say, there's no question taxpayers should not be paying for abortions. Abortion is murder in God's eyes. Seeing and hearing Planned Parenthood talk nonchalantly about selling baby parts from aborted fetuses with utter disregard for human life is reminiscent of Joseph Mengele and the Nazi concentration camps. That should have been all that was needed to turn off the faucet for their funding. Franklin Graham goes on to say, nothing was done to trim this 2,000-page, $1.1 trillion budget. This is an example why I've decided to declare myself independent. I have no hope in any party to do what is best for America. Pretty incredible. But the last thing he said I thought was really related to the conversation we had in the first hour with Ron Kelley, because Franklin Graham then went on to say, unless more godly men and women get in the process and change this wicked system, our country is in for trouble. I want to challenge Christians, even pastors across the country, to pray about running for office where they can have an impact. We need mayors, county commissioners, city council members, school board members who will uphold biblical values. That's, of course, what we talked about in the first hour with Ron Kelley, and interestingly enough, that's what Franklin Graham had to say. So again, we would encourage some of you, if you did not have a chance to hear the first hour program, to go to our website, pointofview.net. And as you go there, you can download the podcast, or you can watch the live cast on our YouTube channel. Because after all, Ron Kelley was in studio with us, and we talked about developing a cultural impact team in your church. And of course, Ron Kelley also is a good example of an individual that was a minister and said, well, you know, I'm just heading up the Prestonwood Foundation. I really don't need another job. But he said, no, I'm going to run for office, and ran for city council and won, and serving there with distinction. And so maybe this is something that others of you might consider as well. Well, that's all we have for today, and tomorrow will be a tape on Christmas Eve, and then, of course, Christmas Day is Friday, so we will not have another live broadcast till Monday. But we want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and I want to certainly say thank you to Ron and to Catherine and to Chris for their work behind the scenes, as well as the rest of the Point of View team. You perhaps have received an email from us, and we certainly hope that you will have a Merry Christmas. But if you find yourself saying, I'd like to maybe listen to some of these programs again, learn a little bit more, visit the website, pointofview.net. Just a great opportunity for you to take some of those resources. And as you do so, please take the time to click on that button that says Changing Lives, Changing the Nation. Your donation would be greatly appreciated. Have a great Christmas. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Vicky Garza started a college ministry providing biblical care and counsel to students in crisis. She did that because of what she learned on Point of View. She heard Point of View because you, or someone like you, made a donation. It all began with a gift.
You don't know when you give to Point of View who you're touching and how much that person is going to be able to touch others. It could go out and touch thousands, even millions of people because you were willing to invest in this ministry. I can't say enough about how it's touched my life and changed me completely.
Virtually everything God does in a human life involves many people and many simple acts. Vicki got involved, and I'm asking you to do the same. If you're concerned about America, invest in Point of View, and please do it right now before 2015 ends. Look for the Changing Lives, Changing the Nation banner at pointofview.net, or give using the Point of View radio app, pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.